Child Talks 2022, coming to you live from Dog Dog in Leinster House. Child Talks was set up to mark World Children's Day, which is this Sunday.
Child Talks is all about creating a space for young people to share their stories, their experiences, and most importantly, their messages about the issues that matter to them. It's also an extra special year for us, as this year we're celebrating 5 years of Child Talks.
Back in August, the Ombudsman for Children's Office put out a call inviting young people to submit their ideas for stories. 7 stories were chosen, and over the last 3 months, we've been hard at work for this day.
The theme for this year's event is If I Were the Taoiseach for the Day. Today, you're going to hear inspiring talks about everything from homelessness to rural transport,
Autism services and the Irish language,
the importance of choice in the school system and equal access to transport for all,
and the importance of finding your own voice.
We'll also have a special performance from Mishnach on female empowerment to close the show. And of course, we're delighted to be joined by you, our audience in Leinster House, as well as the hundreds of schools across the country who are tuning in from class today. Special shout out to Scoil Cronin from Rathcoole for joining us today.
My name is Darius Conifal.
And I'm Angelica Foley.
Both myself and Angelica have been lucky enough to give our talks last year. So we know how important and stressful it is for our speakers today, but we're really excited. Now, we're going to ask the Ombudsman himself, Dr. Niall Muldoon, to join us on stage and say a few words. Can we give him a round of applause?
Thank you very much, Darius and Angelica. Good afternoon to everyone and to everyone at home, and welcome to Child Talks 2022. We're absolutely delighted and honoured to be coming to you live from Leinster House to celebrate our 5th anniversary of Child Talks. And I want to say a huge thank you to the Ceann Ceorta, Deputy Sean O'Farrell and his team for helping to facilitate us being here in this wonderful building and this historic venue, particularly 100 years on from the founding of the state, because it's truly the most appropriate place to be listening to the voices of children and young people from Ireland. We're joined today by a number of TDs and senators, and I know that our speakers really appreciate you being here and listening to their stories. Since our very first Child Talks in 2018, we've heard from almost 30 children and young people from 8 years of age upwards to 17, and they've spoken to us about a range of topics, such as sexuality and the importance of accepting difference, growing up in Ireland as a young traveller, period poverty, climate change internationally and in our local area, personal experiences of mental health issues, digital divide, direct provision, living in direct provision, living with scoliosis, and fast fashion. We started Child Talks in 2018 to celebrate World Children's Day by giving children a platform to talk about the issues that are important to them and to share their experiences. Child Talks has done everything we had hoped it would do and more. We've heard from some amazing young people, and they're getting ready to talk today. More of those young people are getting ready to talk today. We expected this positive part of Child Talks, but what we didn't fully anticipate was the impact that Child Talks would have on us in the office and in the way we do our work. If you've ever bought something online that you weren't quite sure you knew how to work, you know, maybe that fancy new phone or that piece of furniture that has to be put together, you think, okay, I understand that, I've read the instructions, it should be okay. But when you get home, it's a little bit more complicated. My job is a little bit like that. I'm talking to politicians, government agencies, government departments, international agencies, parents, teachers, and lots of people about how they work with children. I give my view on what should happen for children and how children should be considered. And I base that view on proper facts and figures, and on the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. Everything that I say makes sense, at least I think it does, and comes from a well-informed place. But a bit like that fancy phone or that tricky IKEA furniture, experience and understanding can make it a lot easier to pass on the messages. Last year, the OCO published a report on living conditions for children on a halting site. On this site, there were problems with rodents, overcrowding, inadequate heating, and there was no place for children to play. And a lot of children were getting sick because of the conditions. When this investigation started, I was told that there were 66 children and families affected. In 2018, the very first Child Talks we did, one of the very first speakers was a young traveller girl called Margaret, who shared her experiences of being treated differently in school, in a youth club, and also in shops, just because she was a traveller who lived in a halting site. So when we heard about the complaints from the particular halting site at this investigation, the 66 children affected, I immediately heard Margaret's words in the way that she was treated. She said, I want people to recognise us and respect us for who we are. And that's the power. Just like the phone or the piece of furniture, we had gained the insight from Margaret, that extra piece of knowledge that was so important. We would have carried out that investigation anyway, but the strength of her message rang true as we provided the followed through on the investigation. And that's what makes it even more important for us to get in there and try to make a change for those children in the halting sites. I'm regularly here in Leinster House over in the new building, talking to Oireachtas committees about legislation and changes that are needed to make lives better for children. Again and again, I come back to children's words, the stories they tell me, and how the system in place impacts them in everyday lives. Obviously, it is my job to listen to children to promote their rights, but I really believe that all of our politicians and all of the people working with children in Ireland can learn an awful lot and can do better in their work by listening to children. Today, our wonderful speakers are bringing their powerful and inspiring stories to the very heart of the decision making here in Ireland, as they tell us what they would do if they were Taoiseach for a day. And I, for one, cannot wait to hear what they have to say. I want to thank you all again for coming here and for watching online. I'm going to finish by wishing every one of our speakers and performers the very best of luck. I know you will all be fantastic. And to get everyone even more excited, before I hand back to Darius and Angelica, we put together a short video looking back over the last 4 years of Child Talks. Thank you again and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.
In my old girls' school, I would listen to my classmates talk about gay people and say what they really felt about them. The people who were gay were disgusting, unnatural freaks. To them, gay people weren't human, they were the other. And when I sat and listened to them, it didn't feel like they were talking about some faraway concept. It felt like they were talking about me, because they were.
I can be my best self when I get school items. Girls must be respected, enough dormitories in school, enough teachers. I can't be my best self if there are corporal punishment, girls are not respected, medical treatment is not good. Article 12 of the Convention of Rights of the Children states that all children must have an opinion and have to listen and taken serious. So all parents must listen to us and take us serious, because if a girl or a child don't get basic needs from a parents, he or she will go elsewhere and may face different problems.
I am also autistic and have many strengths and a few challenges that are associated with being autistic. Sometimes the environment can get very overwhelming for me. Examples of this is too much sound, especially in busy classrooms and yards. Certain tastes and smells like carrots make my body actively, without my control, spit it out very slowly. Whether we're autistic or not, we all get overwhelmed at times. I found what works for me. It's important that you find what works for you too.
Today I'm now once again on a waiting list for scoliosis surgery. My lungs and heart need more space, so that means I need more surgery. My surgeon says this will happen in January, but we can only hope it will. Access to scoliosis surgery is life-changing. One day I hope to travel the world, play sport and enjoy life. So my message is to the HSE, the government and the people who are in charge, cut the waiting list and let me reach my potential.
Thank you so much, Niall. Now, I know we're all absolutely raring to hear from this year's speakers. Myself and Darius know just how nerve-wracking it can be to come up here on stage and deliver a talk in front of such a big audience. For an awful lot of our speakers, this is their very first time to speak publicly like this. So let's give them all a huge round of applause. The louder the better.
Our first speaker of Child Talks 2022 is 17 years old and comes from Claremorris in Mayo. Mohammed Naeem is the chairperson for Mayo Curlin-Oak, serves on the Ombudsman's Youth Advisory Panel, and only this Friday was selected as Mayo Young Person of the Year. But as impressive as that is, getting started wasn't easy. Will you please put your hands together for Mohammed?
Hi everyone, as you know, my name is Mohammed, I'm 17 and I'm from County Mayo and in Leaving Cert. From a young age, I've always wanted to get involved with things that would enable me to help people. I never really gained the confidence to speak up or put myself forward for things that would come up. For example, many years ago in primary school, an opportunity to join the Green Schools arose. I never gained the courage to put my hand up and say that it was something I'm interested in, even though it was something I really wanted to do. This passion for change has been locked up inside me for a long time. I had begun secondary school in 2017 and I still hadn't found a thing I was good at, something I could speak to about my friends. The first few years of secondary school, I was very quiet and still trying to find my thing. My confidence was a major barrier for me, and I was always overthinking the smallest thing and constantly thinking of what other people thought of me if I did a certain thing. I also had very limited opportunities to make a difference or to get involved with different activist groups. I live in rural Mayo and go to a sport-led school, so there was no real activism opportunities presented to me. I felt there was no young person I could look up to in my area who was prominent in activism. I came to a point where I almost gave up, especially when I experienced young people not being heard. When they did speak up about their views and opinions, whether it was through the student council, climate change protests, lobbying in your local TD, I thought to myself, what is the point when you're constantly just going to reach a dead end? Speaking up about an issue, to raise your voice and concerns is not easy, but then to be dismissed and our views not to be properly considered really discouraged me. Despite all this, I still wanted to do something. But then the world shut down due to the pandemic. I felt like I was getting nowhere. But what I had thought was my biggest barrier surprisingly turned out to be my biggest help in starting my journey in activism. With everything going online, I was able to join any online group I wanted to. Opportunities that I would have never been able to get before due to travelling up to Dublin, where many of these opportunities have normally been based, vanished. Everything became a lot more accessible to me, and it opened up endless opportunities for me and many young rural students. I joined groups such as Eco-UNESCO, the Ombudsman for Children, and the Irish Second Level Students' Union. All this allowed me to gain my confidence. Although it was just online, I met fellow activists who I shared a passion with, and many who had faced similar barriers. When schools reopened, I was in transition year, and there were still a lot of restrictions in place, but I did not let that stop me from making the most of transition year. Early on in the year, I was presented an opportunity to become president of the Young St. Vincent de Paul Society in my school. I finally had the courage to put myself forward, and I was delighted when I got it. I got stuck right into the role and organised a tuck shop to raise funds for the local St. Vincent de Paul. This boosted my confidence massively, and I really surprised myself with how much potential I had. It was one of the first things I got involved with my activism journey. Once I had completed this, I joined different groups and I had amazing support from people around me, my friends, my family, my school. I was always looking for the next thing to do. Activism was something I was so passionate about, and I had finally unlocked it. I got involved with the Irish Second Level Students' Union, an organisation that has helped me grow so much. I put myself forward to run for a position on the Cuistigano, the National Student Executive of the Union. This was a huge decision for me, as it meant I really had to put myself out there and get out of my comfort zone, and I had a really competitive race. I was afraid to run, but I knew I would regret it if I didn't. It all paid off in the end when students across Ireland elected me to represent them nationally, one of my proudest achievements. This was a much bigger deal. I felt like I was finally in a position where my voice would be properly considered. Through this role, I interacted with lots of government departments, politicians, and many other organisations. I had lots of pressure on me to represent students across the country. At the time, students were being faced with one of the biggest challenges, learning during COVID, especially exam years. It was one of the most stressful experiences ever, but the constant uncertainty that followed made things 1,000 times worse. especially when schools reopened in January with just 2 days' notice. Students called for a staggered reopening for each year group, but we were ignored. I did not feel safe going into school right after the Christmas holidays. There was a high level of COVID-19 infections and close contacts. I was getting emails and messages from students complaining that the government needed to do something to help students and give certainty. This decision had direct consequences on me and my fellow peers. We faced a lot of disruptions with teachers being absent and being close contact ourselves. With the return to in-person teaching, there was very limited online learning, as it was difficult for teachers to manage both. This rushed reopening led to huge disruption and further uncertainty. I felt extremely dismissed. Our views were just ignored. They were not even considered, something I've experienced on numerous occasions as a youth activist. Young people always have to fight for their voice to be heard. What can we do to truly have a place at the decision-making table? Article 12 of the United Nations on the Rights of Child states that children's views must be considered and taken into account in all matters affecting us. I feel many people in power take advantage of the word and do not properly consider our views. At 16 years old, we can enter our workplace, pay tax, and leave school. We can even register to vote now, but we cannot actually vote until we're 18. So if I were Taoiseach for the day, I would lower the voting age to 16. Lowering the voting age will mean our views will have to be considered by politicians in charge, as well as letting us say who we put in charge. Students successfully campaigned for a hybrid leaving cert in 2021, and we are constantly holding protests for climate change across the country. So if we were able to vote, we would also not have to sacrifice our education to get our voice heard. Lowering the voting age will have a direct impact on the voting education we receive in schools. Lower the voting age today so that young people can finally have their say on what happens tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Mohammed for kickstarting Child Talks 2022 with something so thought-provoking and important. With so much going on in the world that affects our generation more than any other, it's right to question why we aren't at the table, like at COP27, when all these important decisions are being made.
Our next speaker, Aisling Murphy, comes from Wicklow and is currently studying in Sallynoggin College of Further Education. When we asked Aisling why she wanted to talk at Child Talks this year, she explained how her journey through secondary school inspired her to want to talk about the education system, and Child Talks was a perfect platform for her. Will you please put your hands together for Aisling?
When I was younger, I wanted to be a teacher. So when I started secondary school, I thought I would work hard to achieve this. First year in secondary school was fine for me. I enjoyed class, learning the subjects, and no talk of exams, but this all changed in second year. At the beginning of second year, we started to hear about our junior cert projects we would be working on throughout the year. I specifically remember one day in a science class being told we needed to pick a topic to do our project on. I really wanted to do well, as it was worth 40% of our junior cert grade, and I knew I would struggle in the exam. So, when I was having a tough time picking a topic, I approached my teacher. This was when she told me if I failed this project, I would never get a job. Little did I know, this would be the start of endless hours being spent listening to teachers tell me that my exams defined the rest of my life. Every day leading up to the junior cert was the same, being told about how important it was for me to do well in those 3 weeks in June. I was never one to do amazing in exams, so this really stressed me out. But the projects I had completed in second year gave me the reassurance I needed to know I wouldn't completely fail. Despite all the stress I had faced in the junior cert, it was cancelled thanks to COVID. Then came the real change, transition year. TY was great. We were no longer in school just to do well in exams, and the work was a lot more practical than it had been, as it was focused on us as students and not how well we were going to do in an exam. I really struggled with my mental health in third year due to the stress I was facing every day, and was doing so much better in TY that I decided to set up a project to help raise awareness and overall to attempt to better the mental health of Irish students. It felt relieving knowing I was doing something to help students in the same position I was once in. But soon, everything changed again, in fifth year. I started the year full of motivation. My mental health project helped me realise I wanted to do a social justice degree, and I was determined to achieve this. We were welcomed back into school and then told it was time to put our heads down and take the Leaving Cert seriously. This brought back those same feelings, that same stress I felt in the junior cert, how everything relied on one exam. I soon struggled. For me, it felt like we were being taught about the subjects. We were learning the answer to the questions on the exam. For some students, this was great, but for me it was terrible. There was no projects for me to rely on like I had in junior cert, so I had to do well in the exams. There was also little to no respect from teachers. We were preparing to go to college, yet we were still being treated like young children. We were told what clothes to wear, we had our phones taken away, and we had to ask permission to use the bathroom. I finally hit a breaking point, 2 weeks into 6th year, sitting in a double English on a Monday morning. At this stage, I wasn't doing well in school. My grades and attendance were at an all-time low, and if I wanted to study social justice in college, the only way I could get in was to do a level 5 course after 6th year. So sitting in that English class, I realised I was only wasting a year, being unhappy and stressed in a system I didn't agree with nor fit into. So after this class, I used my school iPad to apply at lunch a year early. There was a lot of people who told me I was doing the wrong thing and that I would never get far in life. Even my school guidance counsellor gave me a half-an-hour lecture about how I would never get a job or even a degree without a leaving cert. I ignored everyone who told me I was doing the wrong thing, and with the support of my parents and a few of my friends, I decided to leave and continue my education in the PLC course. Since that day, I have never looked back or had a single regret about leaving school. My first week of college felt strange. The atmosphere was completely different. The students were happier and the teachers treated us like equals and not like we were under them. Over the coming weeks, even my friends told me they had never seen me so happy. I was finally happy in my education and I was achieving grades I had never gotten before. There seems to be so much stigma around not going through the education system the normal way. The Leaving Cert should not be so exam-based. There should be options for students like me, whose intelligence does not shine through in exams, other than leaving school altogether. The government, especially the Department of Education, need to re-evaluate the Irish secondary school system, as it has not seen any major changes in almost 100 years. So, if I was Taoiseach for a day, I would stop defining our young people through how well they can cope in our school system, and finally, make education more inclusive for those, like me, who do not fit in within our education system.
Thanks, Aisling, for an amazing talk. Thanks for your speech about how our education system is structured, and if COVID showed us anything, we should really look into the Leaving Cert and how it is run.
So, our next speaker is also our youngest. Molly McNulty is 11 and comes from Clongriffin in Dublin. Molly is going to tell you all the remarkable story of how she and her mum finally found their forever home in 2020, after experiencing homelessness, not once, but twice. Will you please give a huge round of applause for our next speaker of Child Talks 2022. It's Molly McNulty.
Hi everyone, today I'm here to talk to you about why housing should be a human right and why no more childhood should go to waste in emergency accommodation. I was homeless twice and I've lived in 9 different places. My journey started when I was 4. We had just moved into a small 1-bedroom flat in Mountjoy Street. I'll never forget the smell of damp, how dark it was and how filthy the mattresses were. We also had some strange rules, like the children couldn't play together, we couldn't go into each other's flats and we couldn't invite anybody over. We also had room inspections without any warning and I used to be terrified if I broke anything because I'd get into serious trouble. But one of the strangest rules was that we had to ask for permission for the doors to be open before 7 AM so my mum could go to work and I'd get the 2 buses I needed to go to school. I remember being very stressed even at the age of 4. I started taking small seizures and one night my mum had to bring me to Temple Street. I remember she was so angry at the staff because they said she needed to be back before midnight or the doors would be locked. My mum used to say we were just like Cinderella because we had a curfew. At this point I didn't know I was living in emergency accommodation. I just thought the staff were caretakers, but one evening everything changed. I was in my grandparents' house and my nana showed on the 6 o'clock news and to my surprise I seen pictures of Mountjoy Street all over the TV. I was like, Nana, look, that's my home, that's where I live. But then all of a sudden I see my mum and another mum from the building hanging out a window shouting homes for people not for profit. I was like, wow, my mum's famous, she's on RTE. Afterwards when she came to collect me I was so excited to tell her she was famous, but she looked sad. She had to explain to me that I was homeless. I was shocked and confused. I knew what the word meant, but I associated with being poor and living on the streets. So I was like, no, ma'am, you work. We have a flat. We can't be homeless. She explained to me about the flat being emergency accommodation and even worse, we were being evicted. I always remember people telling my mum about these local TDs. These people will help. At this time, news had spread about the residents of Mountjoy Street being evicted. Large crowds gathered outside Mountjoy Street to support us. I thought to myself, these must be the TDs. everyone told my mum about. These people will help. So I decided there and then I wanted to become a TD and help others. But how stupid I feel now. These weren't TDs, these were the amazing activists from North Dublin Bay and Dublin Central Housing Action who volunteered their own time to help us. One thing the activists taught me was to use my voice, and I no longer want to be a TD anymore. I want to be a paramedic because at least I actually help others. So after we got evicted from Mountjoy Street, my second time round homeless, we moved into a hub. It was a lot cleaner, the staff were much nicer, and we could invite people over, but we couldn't bring them to our room. But I never invited anybody over because I was too ashamed. The only time I didn't feel ashamed leaving the hub was at Halloween because I had a mask on. At this time, my epilepsy got a lot worse, and my doctor said my stress and my living conditions played a big role in my development of epilepsy. Sometimes the noise in the hub got too much. I used to sleep with my hands over my ears, and I used to be so tired I used to fall asleep in class. Even though life was hard, I knew there was people worse off. So I volunteered at a soup run outside the Central Bank, Friends Helping Friends, and I always remember there was this one boy who used to queue up for food and eat his dinner on a piece of cardboard. It was so sad to see children and elderly people queue up for food. After the hub, we moved into a small bungalow in Clester. It was nice. The only thing I think was wrong with it is I think it was haunted. But it still didn't feel like home. I was still in the routine of living in emergency accommodation. But I'll never forget the day I found I got my forever home. My mum didn't tell me she had the keys in her hand. Walking in, holding my nana's hand, and seeing banners and balloons everywhere saying welcome home, this made the tears fall from my eyes. I can't describe how my life has changed since. I've been able to commit myself to Trinity Gales, my GA team, and even join St. John's Ambulance. My schoolwork has improved so much. I'm not falling asleep in class anymore. I don't have the same stress anymore, but I must say my school Our Lady of Consolation gave me so much support and they understood my situation. But is my homeless journey over? Who knows? When you see students sleeping in cars or sharing beds just to attend university. I hope my parents still have my communion money left over so I can keep it off can I put it off a mortgage when I'm older? Ireland is the third richest country and we still need soup runs like Friends Helping Friends and a lending hand just to help our homeless. Why are the council setting off public land when they could be building social and affordable housing for all? Kids are being cramped into hubs, hotels and even overcrowding their grandparents' homes. To the 3,028 children in emergency accommodation now, this is not your fault, this is not your parents' fault, this is the government's fault. If I was Taoiseach for a day, I'd have housing for all.
Thank you so much, Molly, for such an incredible speech. When we asked Molly why she wanted to take part, she told us, "When I wanted to be a TD, I promised my Nana Mick I would one day speak in Leinster House and tell my story to the government. And it's in her memory why I'm taking part." Well, I think that that's one of the most beautiful reasons I've heard for taking part. And I'm sure wherever Molly's Nana is right now, she's very proud of Molly for delivering such a passionate and a powerful talk on such an important issue. I know we are.
So, we are 3 stories into Child Talks 2022.
Hello, my name's Sophia.
Haven't the speakers done an amazing job so far? So, as you've been hearing, the theme of this event is If I Were Taoiseach for the day. We're now going to hear from another extraordinary young person, Sophia Mulvaney, who lives in Marino in Dublin with her mum and dad, younger brother Liam, and their pet dog Millie. Sophia is a wheelchair user, and when we asked Sophia what she wanted to take part in Child Talks, she said, "I think it's important that children need to have their voices heard, children from all walks of life." We couldn't agree more. So this is Sophia's short video to help share her voice and message.
Hello, my name's Sophia. I'm from Marino in Dublin and I'm going to be talking about inaccessibility regarding our public transport system and especially our DART stations. When I was younger, if we wanted to use the DART, Dad could carry me and Mum could carry my small wheelchair. But as I got older, I didn't want that because it made me feel as though I was being treated like a baby, when I wanted to feel like my own person. We have a family friend called Sean in a wheelchair that had a very scary experience of being stranded in a DART station because the lift didn't work and there was no one to help him. Knowing that makes me feel as though I won't be able to travel like any other young person without a disability could when I'm older. Dad, Sean and myself decided we needed to do something about it. So we started a campaign to raise awareness about the ongoing issues surrounding accessibility and the DART and how it impacts people with disabilities in Ireland. We made a design of a little information card asking people to help us make our DART stations accessible, inclusive and safe for everyone. Every week, my family, Sean and I, would pick a DART station and hand out the information cards. We got a lot of attention from the media, which helped us spread our word to a wider audience. In 1 year, we handed out 25,000 information cards, and a lot of journalists, politicians, along with the public, started to take notice of us and our message. This was people power. After all our hard work, the government started to listen. We started getting commitments from people in power that these issues needed to be resolved. We won a big victory when we were told that it was to be put into the programme of government that all lists were to be upgraded to make them more accessible. We were so excited and happy that our hard work was finally paying off, but our victory was short-lived. The upgrade started and we held great hope that this was the sign of the change we needed. Lifts that had been upgraded started failing, which meant we had been given false hope and let down greatly. But I know that campaigning and hard work can really pay off. I know that I can be a voice for people that haven't got one. And I know that I won't stop until people of all abilities can travel whenever they want without the fear of being stuck on the platform. I won't stop until there's access for all.
Thanks, Sophia there. Were a simple but powerful message on transport authorities and how important it is for everyone to have equal access to public transport.
So, are you ready for our next speaker? Eamon Chunacha was born deep in the heart of the Irish-speaking Gaeltacht of Connemara. Emer herself only learned to speak English when she was 7. Emer is going to tell us about how her complicated relationship with the Irish language and why it can't only be up to communities like hers to keep our native language alive. Aharja, Bulabus Emer.
Alloch déisteachta. Is mis sé Emer na Chunacha agus Thompson idir bblion is scailchamseach Chiaráin ar a Gear Rua. Rúgu agus tógiúma an Gaeltacht Connemara, an cantar Gaeltachtas mús tír. Ní róla má béla go dtí gur má seachna na gaiis. Chama má óige ar a gaiich chéan a cha chola gás ar eile sa tír na blianta sin. Sin téin difrach do bháin na gnear na mis agus mochas cárde thuí ghailge. Ach bhí brú ar le a baint leis sin. Agus muid a fólam béla agus muid a géir láirt na chéile, ní bhacht trí ocail ráteng sol a stoppach na fásta muid, agus gnéir díis láircí gailge. Gan sib ní waide an tanga, is sib an chéad chlún eile. A cháde nach bocht de scéala sin. Níl se ceart agus níl se cód, agus níor cheart gur a gasú na Gaeltachta a bheith an tualach sin. Dhéirí gúnaí ling ní neart go chur le chéile. Ach cén fá nach dag an sibse a folitúí le chéile ling chun an ghailge a chothú agus a neartú. Is minic go mbeadh na gasú a héin sig na colistí saora in éiad le pobl na Gaeltachta. Agus cá mar rá cháde ní bhfuil chu damhla. Ach tá níos mú bhhain leis an Gaeltacht na ceol agus órán áling, céalaí agus dain sa bríomhar. Tá éagúir chá dhéanamh ar phobal na Gaeltachta le 100 bliana nuas. Tá an córas in Arnáid, agus ní chafar ach siúlaisteach an aon scoil sa tír chun sin na hiiscint. Is cum a céhéad iireachta a chun an gastar na Gaeltachta is seach. Má tá an córas éidechais in Arnáid, tá mise muchad cárde agus chulaghine as cantar gaeltachta fácaí ag snámhan asa feadh ar good síl. Irish is, under Article 8 of the Constitution, our first national language, meant to be cherished and given a place in modern-day Ireland. Ever since the establishment of the Irish Free State in 1922, however, every single government since has failed to uphold that constitutional promise. If anyone in this room can say that Irish is indeed given the same value as English in our society, they would be lying. A country with a population of 6 million, and yet census figures show that only 74,000 people speak Irish daily. An embarrassment and a tragedy. Irish is often forgotten when politicians are discussing our country's problems, yet after years of negligence, there are more problems than ever. Why should I be punished as a native speaker in my state exams? Why must I have to sit a T1 exam? If it was proposed that there would be an easier exam for non-native English speakers, there would be uproar. Why must I sit a more difficult exam with less marks going for the oral purely because I'm good at it? Why must the translations of the exams be so terrible that before my junior cert, every single teacher warned us that we must request a copy of the English exam to stand a chance? Why must half my textbooks be in English or horrifically translated Irish? And why must I have to use a stilted, ugly form of the language I love so deeply at the risk of losing marks for using my Connemara Irish rather than An Caighdeán? My answer to this problem is simple. A complete overhaul of the education system surrounding the Irish language must happen. Irish should be split into 2 subjects, one compulsory and one optional. Compulsory Irish should be completely focused on communication. Reading, writing and grammar would of course be a part of the curriculum, but at least 50% of marks would be awarded to an oral examination. Ireland's youth would leave school with their national language at the tip of their tongues, proud of being able to carry on thousands of years of history and culture. Irish literature would then be an optional subject, in which students could study the poems and stories that, whilst important, are simply too much for a student who does not understand the language. Confident students could choose to take this subject, ensuring these texts would not be lost. Irish would be enjoyable, and students would not gain such a distaste and loathing for the language. The current system is a waste of time and resources. Take, for example, modern European languages, studied in secondary school for 6 years, and yet students have a much better understanding of these languages than Irish that they have studied for 14 years. Also, embrace the different dialects, rather than forcing us into the standard, which frankly fails to capture the beauty and emotions that dialectical Irish does so effortlessly. In 21st century Ireland, there is a want and a need for Irish. At public events and on St. Patrick's Day, politicians hasten to speak a few words of Irish. And as nice as it is to hear, it's simply not good enough. Every politician should make it a personal mission to improve their Irish and to speak it often and with pride. Irish is often viewed as a dull, difficult subject, teaching an obsolete and dead language. With a different education system and attitude, people will begin to realise she is a valuable and vibrant part of our heritage. This is not a new subject. There was a Gaeltacht civil rights movement during the late 60s and 70s around the country, particularly Connemara. And Achtanis in the 6 counties continue to campaign for their Irish language rights. I myself have attended 2 of their protests, dubbed An Lá Dearg, most recently this past May. It was heartwarming to witness thousands of Irish speakers walking the streets of Belfast, singing Irish songs and speaking our language full of pride and joy. 2 weeks ago, I made my annual pilgrimage to Killarney for Oireachtas na Samhna, where all around you for 5 days straight was a celebration of Irish music, dance, poetry, and above all, language. This should not be an annual occurrence worth noting. It should be accepted that on any given day, in any given corner of Ireland, you could turn to the person beside you and speak Irish to them. After all, Behatanga Ial Arts. Da mengshe mohishach ar fan lei, darung in chorus edachus a wanan leshin gaelge, agus huring an muinu atá ag tasdal go géir go cheantar Gaeltachta. Tá an Gaeltacht ar a dé dere, agus na míl sa blian stare agus cultúr in dhéanach lei. ach níl se róháil. Bhín súil le mud ach ní bhíon súil le thua. Asoch déirí folitúí, gníomhaigí, agus tuairigí cosint gon Ghaeilge agus gon Ghaeltacht. Tír gan teanga, tír gan anam. Gur mágaí.
Anna wahímar, mar déir an seanach go, tír gan teanga, tír gan anam. So, our next speaker is Sam Brooks, who comes from the small village of Chalk McConnell in County Roscommon. When the only bus serving the community was axed during COVID, Sam was inspired to speak out against it. Ladies and gentlemen, will you please put your hands together for our next speaker of Child Talks 2022, it's Sam Brooks.
Hello everyone, my name is Sam Brooks and I'm a 17-year-old student from the small village of Chalk McConnell in South Roscommon, and I am here to give an insight into the Irish public transportation system and how it has affected my life for better and for worse. Successive governments have time and time again failed Ireland's rural communities. Take my own village as an example. Growing up, there were constant cuts to public services. These cuts have been persistent for decades now, particularly in the area of public transport. First, the train station was decommissioned, then they reduced the number of bus connections, and then they cut the bus route entirely. This has particularly impacted young people such as myself, both from my village and from many villages stretching from Galway to Dublin. Growing up, public transport played a vital role in my development. Some of my earliest memories involved travelling with my granny to Dublin to visit my aunt. This was invaluable, as it was the only time I got to see her, and they remain some of my most vivid memories from when I was younger. The bus facilitated these visits, and the countless memories I have gained as a result, whether it was seeing the Gaiety Panto or visiting museums. Is it really such a far-fetched notion that our government should implement protections for these vital intercity routes instead of stepping aside and letting them be cut? As I grew older, I began to use the bus to travel to Galway with friends. Growing up in a rural village, there was not an awful lot to do unless you were a member of the local GAA club. Thus, it was incredibly freeing to be able to travel on the bus, as it was, I'm sure, for many more young people situated in rural communities along that route. So when I heard that Bus Éireann Route 20, the route that served local communities from Dublin to Galway, had been cancelled, I was angry. We weren't told why, but the impact has been huge. Many communities served by Route 20 had just lost their only mode of transport from Dublin to Galway. Our government had failed rural communities again. For myself and many others, the bus was the only cheap and accessible mode of transport. It is especially important for young people, as over 1/3 of those aged 24 and under use the bus at least 5 times per week. Local communities deserve buses linking them to big local towns and train stations. Over COVID, I got more involved in organisations such as the Irish Second Level Students' Union. This meant I had to consider how I was now going to attend these meetings in Dublin and around Ireland without bus. Thankfully, train fares were cut, which was a massive step in the right direction, but the train station is still a 20-minute drive from my home. Despite this, I managed to attend these meetings, and I've now formed new memories, not unlike the ones I made when I was younger. I've travelled to Dublin to speak at the Seanad and to open days around Ireland in preparation for college next year. These experiences have helped shape who I am today, and they simply would not have happened without public transport. However, the frequency and price of train services is not the only issue. We also need to consider how few trains we actually have in Ireland. Next year, I will be heading off to college, which is an already stressful time in a young person's life, even putting aside the ongoing accommodation crisis. One of my choices is the University of Limerick, However, if I am unable to get accommodation, I would face commutes of over 3 hours. For me, driving isn't even an option, as I will be starting college aged 17 before I can get my full driving licence. So what am I and many young people like me supposed to do? People should not be limited by the meagre amount of destinations currently offered by public transport in Ireland. Take proposals such as the Western Rail Corridor, which by some estimates would see nearly 1 million passengers a year, or the Athlone to Mullingar rail link, which would be invaluable in carrying students from Mullingar to Moat to cities like Galway and towns like Athlone, and vice versa. It's high time proposals like these were taken seriously by our government. At the end of the day, public transport is about so much more than the journey from A to B. I myself would not be the person I am today without public transport. So if I was Taoiseach for the day, I would aim to deliver cheap or even free public transit fares. I would create an expanded bus network linking every local community in Ireland with the rest of the country. And I would increase the frequency of our train and expand Ireland's dismal railway network. I understand that these are ambitious goals, but if it enables a student to be able to access their dream course in college, or if it provides one child with an experience they otherwise wouldn't be able to do, then surely it would all be worth it. Thank you.
Wow, what a speech. Thank you, Sam, for highlighting the huge issue that is the lack of transport options, an issue facing the thousands of young people living in rural Ireland today, particularly those in areas with no train services like Monaghan and Donegal. Now, you might have seen our final Child Talk speaker on the Late Late Show last week. Cara Darmody is only 12, but she has achieved so much so far on behalf of her two brothers, who she passionately campaigns for. She's taken on the HSE, the Irish government, but she's facing her biggest challenge yet next year, the Leaving Cert, and she's going to tell you all about it just now. Ladies and gentlemen, will you please put your hands together for our final speaker, Cara Darmody.
Hi everyone, my name is Cara Darmody and I'm 12 years old. I'm from Ardfinnan in County Tipperary and I live there with my family. I live there with my mammy, my daddy and my two brothers Neil and John. Unfortunately, they are both severely autistic. Neil got diagnosed by the HSE at 3 3/4 years of age. He never got the proper services that he deserved and he never got early intervention either. A result of that is that he hits and bites himself every single day and he commits violence to himself all of the time, and it is really, really sad that my mum and dad and me and my whole family have to see that. Meanwhile, John got diagnosed privately at 1 3/4 years of age. He got early intervention and there is not as much damage done as what was with Neil. And Mammy and Daddy also got him private services, so he's done a lot better than Neil too. For example, he has a bit of comprehension, he can understand what Mammy and Daddy and me say to him, and he also is toilet trained as well. I can see the clear difference between getting early intervention and not getting it. When you do not get early intervention, there is permanent damage done. And when you do get early intervention, that permanent damage is not done. And this is my message to the government and the HSE. Stop saying early intervention because it does not exist unless you pay privately for it. And you should not have to pay extra money for private services that you should already be entitled to. And on top of all of this information, I also found out that there are thousands and thousands of families all around the country in every county, just like our family. And in fact, 18,000 children, like my two brothers, who are left to rot on a HSE waiting list. This is just plain wrong. It makes me feel really sad and very angry. So I decided that I was going to do something about it. So last year, I decided that I was going to fundraise for Ardfinnan National School and Scullcormac Special School, and also raise awareness about the lack of therapy services issue, and also to stand up for those children with autism and disabilities. In September 2021, my dad was in the kitchen reading his newspaper, and I came into him and I told him that I had a brilliant idea, and he was expecting me to say I cut the lawn for him or something. But I told him that I was going to sit the Junior Cert Maths exam for charity. And he was so shocked he nearly fell off the stool and I had to do CPR on him. But, wait for it, the funniest part is, when he started to recover from his shock, I then told him that he will be teaching me for this impossible task. Then he really died. So, I ended up sitting the exam in June and, wait for it, I raised €40,000. And I studied in used over 400 extra hours for the exam in total, which is about 70 extra school days for the exam. And last Friday night on the Late Late Show, I got my results in the show, and I got 97%. I also raised awareness of the lack of therapy services issues. I met many politicians, including Taoiseach Leo Varadkar, Mary Lou MacDonald, and Minister Anne Rabbitte, and many more. But on the 28th of July, I finally met the Taoiseach in his office for 80 minutes. He was one of the nicest people that I've ever met. And I told him that he must now treat us like the house is on fire, and that he is the parent and the HSE is the child, and that he was basically guilty of not parenting the child. And he told me that he promised me a lot of changes. But I told him that if change is not done, that I used the line from the Terminator, that I'll be back if change is not done. So, we're now in the middle of November. What has changed? Nothing. There are 18,000 children left to rot on a HSE waiting list. It is so wrong, and he has done nothing about it. So, I told them that if there's no change done, that I'll be back. So everybody, today, I am back. 2 weeks ago, I was the first child and the youngest person to ever give evidence to an Oireachtas committee. It was very serious, and they listened to my message, and they took it wicked seriously. But however, I added in at the end that they'll probably say something that day to me like, I hope you have a nice weekend. I won't! When I go home, I'm going to have to see my brother hitting and biting himself and committing violence to himself. And it is so wrong. And my family will have to see it as well. And it is disgraceful. So, what will I do now? While only 12 years old and in 6th class, I'm going to become the first national school child in the history of Ireland to attempt to sit the Leaving Cert Maths exam for charity. And I'm doing it for those 18,000 children, and also to stand up for children with autism and disabilities. And many people have told me that it is impossible and that I won't do it. But this is my message to them. I'm possible. My message is very simple. End disability discrimination. No more talk, only action needed. Politicians are all talk and no action, and that must change right now. But this speech is called If I Was Taoiseach for a Day. So, if I was Taoiseach for a day, this is what I would do. Or, more importantly, what I want Micheál Martin to do today. So here are the 3 things that I want to be changed and what I want to do. Number 1, end parents paying privately for services that they should already be entitled to. The HSE should be paying for these services, but they're making parents pay for them, like my mum and my dad. And it is so wrong. Number 2, make the HSE accountable for its lack of action on this issue. The HSE are not accountable right now, and that must change. Sure, when someone complains against them that there's not enough services, they investigate it themselves. That is not being accountable, and they must change their attitudes right now. And number 3, and last of all, to treat carers properly. Carers are being treated disgracefully right now. Carers work so hard. Carers work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they don't get treated good at all. The carers need to be treated with respect, and they need to be treated better because they are being treated absolutely disgracefully by the HSE and politicians. Last Friday night on the Late Late Show, I said 4 times live in the show that it was a national disgrace what is going on. So I'm going to say it again today. The HSE and politicians and the government are a national disgrace, and they need to do something about this right now. And I am calling to end disability discrimination. Let me be clear. Cara Darmody will not stop until change occurs. Thank you all for listening to my speech.
That was Cara Darmody. Amazing stuff.
So, we've got one more video that we're going to share with you, and then we're going to close with a very special live performance from Mishnock. First, let's watch a short video they've made for us about how this brilliant group of strong, inspiring young women got together and found their voice.
Mishnock began at the Kevin Studio, a non-profit community space in Cork. We use original songs, spoken word, and poetry to express how we feel about female empowerment and what it's like growing up in Ireland as a young woman.
It all started the summer of 21. The Cork hurling team had just made it to the finals. There was merchandise everywhere in support of the men's team. At the cabin, one of the boys even wrote a rap in support of the team called Rebel With Us. It was everywhere. Soon after that, the Cork Camogie team also made it to the final, but weren't shown the same support or respect that the men's team had gotten. We were frustrated and angry. So, a group of us decided to get together and write a song in support of the women's team. We quickly learned that we didn't have enough time nor funding to create the song or video. It was really disappointing.
But we took this disappointment and tried to turn it into something positive. We created a group speaking on female empowerment through music, spoken word and podcasts. A couple months later, we applied for the St. Patrick's Day Fest and TikTok Collaborative Fund. We received 10 grand to fund the project, and then we came up with our group's new name, Mishnock, the Irish word for courage.
Starting Mishnock really gave me the confidence that I needed because the cabin used to be really male dominated, so seeing a full female project and getting to be a part of it made me feel so appreciated, and not only me but all the other women feel empowered.
The first song we made together is called No Worries. It's about nurturing female figures from our childhood such as a mom, nan, aunt, sister, etc. Instead of writing about a celebrity, we decided to make it more personal by idolizing female figures in our lives.
Another song we wrote is called Pressure, which is about how women feel the need to uphold the unrealistic beauty standards shown in the media. One of my favourite lines in Pressure is, "They say boys will be boys in how they use their words, so why have double standards when it comes to girls?"
Since starting Mishnock, we have had so many amazing opportunities. This summer, we got to perform at Cork Pride to over 5,000 people, including our teachers, youth workers and other cabin members. The cabin has gone from being predominantly male to now mostly females attending the workshops. Seeing this made us realise how much of an impact we have had, not only on young girls, but young boys as well.
Today we will be performing the final song in the Mishnock trilogy, which is called Shine True. This song is about empowerment, being who you are and not letting anyone dictate your life.
You do not gonna make me live your way. No, I don't have something to prove. Small in height, big at heart. These can't tear me apart. Take a walk in my shoes. If you're confused, you can step in, you can start. I won't sit quietly. I will be heard and seen. No one can tell me what I can and what I cannot be. How I should look, what I should wear, what I can say. I'm not gonna be a statistic on a page. Don't let them put you in a box and get restricted. Just evict them from your thoughts and all those toxic ways of thinking. Go find something else to put your mind to, cause powerful calling ain't gonna shine through. I'm alright with who I am, are you? Are you? Yeah. I'm alright with who I am, are you? Are you? I'm alright with who I am, are you? Are you? Colleen Mishnock will change your attitude. There'll never be anyone like you. Rise up. You know you got it, let it shine through. Rise up. There'll never be anyone like you. Rise up. You know you got it, let it shine through. Rise up. Never let anyone tell you what you can't do. It's not your fault if they don't understand you. Embrace your inner beauty, come on, just share. Love your flaws, love your body, love yourself.
Okay, gonna raise you up, up. We're gonna reach the top, top. Elevate, we gon' celebrate it. Stay motivated, we educated, so elegant, intelligent. In my element, tell the world about it. Love yourself, don't you hesitate. Let the people see the love resonate. Yeah.
Don't know if you have heard.
We run the world.
Think or weak, don't be absurd. Expand your mind, your judgment's blurred.
Call it out, take a stand, see your privilege. Do it for your sisters and mothers and just start listening. Hey!
Are you alright with who I am? Are you?
Are you?
I'm alright with who I am. Are you?
Are you?
Yeah. I'm alright with who I am. Are you?
Are you?
Colleen Mishnock will change her attitude. There'll never be anyone like you.
Rise up.
You know you got it, let it shine through.
Rise up.
There'll never be anyone like you.
Rise up.
You know you got it, let it shine through.
Rise up.
That was Mishnock.
Wow. So today you've heard stories from an amazing group of young people who have spent the last few months working with the Ombudsman for Children's Office to develop these stories into something really special. Can we have one more big round of applause and welcome back on stage our speakers?
Sam, Mohammed, Cara, Molly, Aisling, and Emer.
And so, all good things must come to an end, and this brings Child Talks 2022 to a close. But we'll be back next year with Child Talks 2023, and if you've been inspired by the young people on stage and you've got something to say, make sure to keep an eye out on our website for updates about how to get involved. You have been watching Child Talks 2022, coming to you live from Leinster House. My name is Angelica Foley.
And I'm Darius. Thanks for watching and see you next year.